I spec'd out the world's most insane LS cam and got a custom ground for our LS3. Stick around. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the garage. It's been a while since we've done a video like this, so I want to start off by thanking Frankenstein Engine Dynamics. This wouldn't be possible without them, and you're going to see a lot more of this as we dive into the LS3. So let's talk about this ugly, filthy bump stick that I have spec'd out. This is the wildest LS cam on the face of the planet. Anywhere. Nobody sells anything like this, and I'll tell you a couple reasons why. One, what I did, thanks to the amazing data that you can get off of Frankenstein's website on the flow for these heads. These are the 311 non-boost monster. They're 273cc LS3 heads. These things are just beautiful. They're about $3,000 a set, come with a rocker stand. You've heard of Frankenstein. If you're watching this video, this isn't the first time that this company's been talked about, or you have heard of them if you're in the car industry. These guys are at the head of the pack when it comes to LS cylinder heads, and even some non-LS. They do Hemi, Ford Modular Coyote, stuff like that. So the cool thing about these are, will run up to 700 lift. And so what I did was take all of the information of a stock LS3 with these heads and plugged them into Dyno Sim 6. I've got a video, I'll link it up in the corner somewhere here where you can go back, and I talk about Dyno Sim 6 and run some numbers through it. And I actually like the program because I've ran multiple setups through it, and even to the point of gone online and found other people's setups that they're running engines on engine dynos and plugged those values in, like on Engine Masters. I think I did it in that video where I had a couple motors that they built on Engine Masters, and that program came within about 10 pounds or 10 horsepower, 10 foot-pounds of what they were actually reading on the dyno at West Tech Performance. So if you have good data going in, you'll get good data going out.
Quickly, Mr. Data, lock out the main computer.
And that's the nice thing about having a set of heads like this that has really good data. The flow data on these heads are spectacular. At 700 lift on the intake, we're flowing 383 cubic feet per minute. On the exhaust, we're at 265. Pretty big step up, but you got to keep in mind that heads alone is just one small part of the package. Cam is what really is going to make the big difference because it is controlling the actual valves themselves, how far they open, how long they're open, all that stuff, along with rocker arms and things like that. So you got to go in, and I think I spec these out with 172 Texas speed rocker arms. It's the kind of the slightly upgraded LS3 style. And then the rest of it pretty much stock. Stock intake manifold. I've got the Motion Raceworks throttle body on there. I mean, this LS3's got like 5 miles on. But what we're going to have to do is build a test stand to run this, and I'll tell you why. This cam is so wild, it's not even feasible. I don't know if this thing will even run, to be honest with you. Big shout out to Cam Motion for cutting this cam for me, because I'm sure if somebody looked at the numbers, they were like, yo, this thing is stupid. And one of the main reasons why is I tried to find an existing cam for any platform that had the same or close to the values on this, and the only cams that I could find that were anywhere close to this is what they run on Top Fuel dragsters. Let that sink in for a bit. Top Fuel dragster cam for an LS3. So here's the numbers, and I'm going to read these numbers off to you. I hope and pray that nobody is dumb enough to try and spec one of these things out. And I'm actually glad to see that my overlap wasn't as bad as I thought, because originally whenever I spec'd this out, it had 66 degrees of overlap in it, which is unfathomable. You know, we're talking idling maybe at 2,000 RPMs. And that's even if you could get it started. So by the time they actually ground my numbers in, and I did have to modify it. What I did was I put all this stuff in, put my maximum lift into the dyno sim, and said, this is maximum lift. I want you to go through with the iterator and see what makes the most power under the curve between 2,000 and 7,000 RPMs. And then I simulated over 100,000 cam profiles. Let that sink in. 100,000 cams to come up with this cam that on this motor with these heads should be making 300 horsepower at the flywheel by 2,000 RPMs and top out at 595 at 7,000 RPMs. So, because of that, whenever I got those numbers, it was too violent on the valve train. It was literally going to beat the valve train to death. It wasn't even within the acceleration factor for the valve train of a race cam. It was beyond that. And so I had to go in and tweak some of the lift and duration a little bit to calm it down so it wouldn't beat the valve train to death. It is now in the range of a fairly aggressive, super aggressive strip cam or full race cam. It's basically full race. This isn't something, and it's probably still going to have to idle at 12 to 1300 RPMs if we can get started. That's what I'm worried about is whenever you have as much overlap as this has, you lose compression whenever you're cranking. You're normally cranking about 200 RPMs, and it has to have compression in order to light the fuel off. And if we can't get compression, we may not be able to light it off and get this thing to even fire up and run. That's why we're going to do it on test stand. I'm not going to put this in a car and try and figure it out. But I figured worst case scenario, we'll put it on test stand and we run 24 volts to the starter and really spin this thing up if we have to. Hell, I'll run 48 to it if I need to. But here is our specs. Okay, let's start with our LSA, and here's the cam number, and I'll give you the grind. The cam number is LS-331-0162-142041. That's total custom to this, and the grind is an XA249-405-265-405-111.5. So we got a lobe separation of 111.5 with the cam time straight up, no advance or retard in it. And we've got overlap at 50 at 34 degrees. So we cut 30 degrees out of the overlap, and that's why this thing might be feasible. We might be able to get it actually up and running on it. So our tappet lift is 405, rocker arm ratio of a 172. Valve lift on the intake is a 696, exhaust a 697. So we are maxing out what our springs can do. We'll probably have to fly cut the motor or the cylinder or the pistons. We'll check all that out once we get all this installed. And yeah, it's pretty insane if you look at the chart, and I don't know how much you'll be able to see of how much overlap is on this thing at bottom dead center. So now, that being said, if you find this interesting, this asinine cam, and if we can get this cam even running, maybe I can jerk this thing out and send it out to Richard and have him throw it in something and actually test it and see if we get the numbers even close to what we were looking at for it. But I can also go in and do a peak horsepower cam, and it is a cam that is a lot more rational and is probably closer to something that you can buy off the shelf, to be honest with you. I was more interested in an NA build that made as much torque and power as possible in the meat of it. And so if we're cruising at, say, 2,000 RPMs in a car that has a turbo 400R power glide, will be right on where the meat of the power is, even whenever we're in third or we're in our 1-to-1 gear there. And so we can have a lot of fun with it that way, and then it'll just make gobs of power all the way to red line at 7,000. So that is this cam in a nutshell. And so I hope you guys stick around as we build the test stand, throw basically our 5-mile LS3 on the test stand with our new Frankenstein heads. Big shout out to them again. I love the guys over at Frankenstein, and I really appreciate them partnering up with us on this LS3, which most likely will make its way into the Chevelle sooner than later. And yeah, we'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can get this thing to run. And, you know, honestly, this cam is about $500. Not a lot of, you know, getting a custom grind done, $500-600, not crazy. And I know I'm not a cam expert whatsoever. You know, I'm using computer software to simulate, you know, do I want to do this? I give it what I'm looking for and it spits out some numbers, and I tinker with them and I make a cam off of it. Is it feasible? I don't know. For most people, no, it's not going to be feasible. You're just going to want to go on somebody's website like BTR and pick a cam that is a tried, tested, and true. That's, you know, they run them on Spintrons and stuff like that and all the fancy stuff for testing. This is purely just for fun. So listen, I'm going to get back to it. You guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning.